So a while back I made a video about my 22, and I carry a 22 as a self-defense weapon. I know people are going to say, oh, that's a self-defense weapon, but I disagree. I'm very happy with it. I've carried it for a very long time, and right now that's pretty much all I use is 22. Ammo's pretty cheap, but really not point of the video. But I made a video about this, and one thing is pretty clear to me is the American people have no clue about the realities of government. Everybody, first of all, not everybody, I should be a little bit more cautious about my wording, believes that they're a lawyer and they know everything there is to know about every law and aspect and constitution and tax fraud and the tax code, and it's quite clear they don't understand it at all. When things don't go their way, they're angry. And I talk about being angry about government and all kinds of stuff all the time, but when you live off grid, you just kind of give up on it. You're like, who cares? It's a joke. Our government is a joke, and I'm going to explain all this. So in that video, I was talking about how the ATF wanted to make a new rule. Currently, they have to go to the court. I think it's going to be in December. They have to go to the Supreme Court. And what is expected is the ATF is going to be stripped of its powers. Well, before they go to court, they've decided they wanted to make a rule. You could not sell a gun, any gun you own, for a profit unless you had an FFL license. Well, I was showing you at the time my 22 rifle, and my dad gave me that 22 rifle. And if I wanted to sell it, I couldn't. I could give it away, but I can't sell it unless I want to have an FFL license. That video trended. I think it's up to 400,000 views. Don't quote me. It could be a little bit more now. I think I saw 400,000 views at one point. The basis of the comment section read this way: they can't do that. That's against the Second Amendment. I realize we have a constitution. And I realize that as Americans, we have rights, God-given rights. This isn't a government-given right. This isn't something that they can take away. But the first thing I said in that video is the Constitution is up for interpretation, and whoever's in office can interpret it however they want. So in the video, I was talking about the Supreme Court can make a ruling. But who's there to enforce the ruling? And it's like nobody heard that. Well, they can't do that. The Supreme Court just said they can't do that. On various issues, nobody is there to stop them. Okay, here's how things work. The Constitution does say that the Supreme Court can make a ruling about the constitutionality of stuff, whatever it is. Whatever's brought to them, they can say, oh no, that's against the Constitution. They have to stop doing that. Or they can say, no, that's constitutional. They can continue to do it. It's pretty simple how that works. The Supreme Court doesn't have a big law enforcement group that goes out and arrests people for violating what they just ruled. Nope, that goes back to the president and Congress, which I said in the video. So let's assume the ATF, who works for the president of the United States, decides they want to make me have an FFL license based on a 1968 law that they've interpreted that now I gotta have one. Somehow this 1968 law that Congress wrote, somehow in it says that if I want to sell a gun, I have to have a license. So the Supreme Court says, no, you can't do that. That's unconstitutional. Oh, good. So we're all out here celebrating how the Supreme Court ruled in our favor, and we now can own guns and we can sell them to whoever we want for a profit. Yet I go and sell it and they come and arrest me. Well, why'd they do that? Well, because they can. People keep telling me they can't do that. That's against the Second Amendment. But they do it. Who's enforcing the Supreme Court? Well, the president enforces the Supreme Court's decisions. So the Supreme Court says the ATF, who works for the president, can't go and confiscate guns. They go out and confiscate guns. Is the Department of Justice, who works for the president, actually going to prosecute the ATF? No. So who else can do it? Well, there's three branches of government. There's the executive branch, which is the president. There's the legislative branch, which is Congress. And there's the judicial branch, which is the courts. So we've already addressed two of them. The judges can't do it. The president isn't going to do it. So that leaves Congress. Oh, good. Yes. All right. We got Congress. They're going to save us. So Congress immediately goes and starts impeachment proceedings because the president just violated a law by arresting one person for selling a gun without an FFL license, which is unconstitutional according to the Supreme Court. Wait, that's never happened. There's only been a few cases of impeachment ever taking place, and none of them had anything to do with violation of the Supreme Court's rulings. None of them. Yet the president does it all the time. In that video, I was talking about how the president told tenants that they could stay in their rented properties rent-free for the duration of whatever he decided, the president decided. That means landlords had to let them stay in their homes for free. Well, the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. That's unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court went on vacation, a holiday or something. Well, okay, so what? The president went ahead and allowed renters to stay in their homes for free. Who enforced that? Where was the impeachment? Where was the judicial branch? Where was the Department of Justice? Nothing happened. So don't tell me they can't do that. They can do whatever they want. So getting back to Congress, I hear all the time, well, once we get a Republican in office, everything will change. No, it won't. The only thing we ever see Republicans do, or Democrats, well, no, Democrats are a little bit more forceful, actually, in getting things accomplished, taking our rights away, than Republicans are to getting them back. The only thing we ever see from Republican congressmen is congressional hearings. They hold hearings. You're going to stop that. I remember all these congressional hearings happening with the big tech industry. Big tech, censoring speech. What did they do about it? I mean, time after time, there's this Texas senator. That's all he talked about. Constantly, nonstop, big tech censoring conservative speech. And he did nothing. Except every year, they'd hold a congressional hearing and they'd complain. Big tech censoring conservative speech. So we know big tech is censoring conservative speech. What did they do about it? Absolutely nothing. Then years later, a couple of years later, however long it took, it's exposed. Facebook comes out, Mark Zuckerberg, and says, yeah, the FBI was coming over and telling us what we had to censor and not censor, and so we did it. Well, I'm sure that some court in somewhere has decided that is illegal. You can't do that. So who got prosecuted? Who got impeached? Nobody. So again, you can't tell me they can't do that. They can do whatever they want. I've been watching, a little bit off subject, this civil rights attorney. We have the Fourth Amendment, which keeps them from arresting us or doing different things unless they have probable cause that a crime has been committed or a warrant. But I see video after video on this channel showing civil rights being violated, Fourth Amendment rights being violated, detaining people because they're not given an ID. Even though state law says nothing about having to give an ID, a guy walking down the street, hey, stop right there, let me see your ID. What crime did I commit? I don't care what crime you committed. And then they put them in cuffs, you're being detained, and all of it is a violation. Now, I'm not a lawyer. Just like I said in the beginning of this video, there's a lot of lawyers in my comment section because they all tell me what the government can and can't do, but nobody seems to understand who can actually enforce these laws. Now, if I violate a law and the judge says you can't do that, and I go ahead and do it anyways, well, they're going to send the sheriff out after me, the state patrol, they're going to have me arrested, they're going to send me to court again. Why is it that Congress, the people that represent us, won't do anything to help us? Well, that's simple. Why should they? First of all, we need term limits. We got to have term limits. Term limits is a defined amount of time you can stay in office. We got to have it. I've been spewing this for years. The president has term limits. So why doesn't Congress just do that for themselves? Well, why would they? That's political suicide. Why would you voluntarily give up your jobs after a certain amount of time in office? Now, I hear politicians all the time, freshmen going into Congress, I'm going to make sure that term limits are implemented immediately. So they go into office, and within 6 months, every politician that goes into office immediately stops behaving like the person they were before they got elected. What happened? Well, it's money. Somebody paid them off. Some company, some government agency, somebody paid them off, tell them, shut up, you'll be in office for a very long time making bukus of money from all these special interest groups if you just go the way we tell you to go. And there's not enough congressmen in office that can guarantee a re-election. There are some in Florida, some in Texas that know that they're always going to get reelected. They don't even have to try. They just throw their name in a hat and everybody reelects them. But in the rest of the country, it's a run. They got to run, they got to campaign, they got to spend money, and they need the money so they can continue to run. So how else can we get term limits? Well, we got to have a constitutional convention. That means you got to have two-thirds, I think it's two-thirds of the states. Again, don't quote me, it's not that big of a deal, but you got to have a majority of the states agree to a constitutional convention. Right now, I believe there are 17 states that have agreed to a constitutional convention, 18 recently, but I'm going to get to that one, that want term limits. That's the whole premise behind their constitutional convention. So what happens is the state Congress, so your state congressman, not the federal congressman, the state congressman, they get together and they vote to determine that they want a constitutional convention. That goes up to the governor signs it, now it's law. As soon as there's enough states in place, they'll have a constitutional convention. Usually they put a time limit on when this can happen. So they'll say within the next 10 years. If there's enough states in the next 10 years for a constitutional convention, they'll have one. Now, for the other state, there's another state that wants a constitutional convention. The only thing they want is to ban guns. They want to override the Second Amendment. So have a constitutional convention with the majority of the states agreeing to get rid of guns. Well, that's never going to happen. You're never going to get enough states with, like, the majority of the states right now actually have constitutional carry. So the state itself says it's a constitutional right to carry a gun. You're not going to get enough states, but they're just doing it for a political move. But then somebody asked California, well, what if the other states want to put other things in the Constitutional Convention like term limits? Oh no, they all have to agree there's going to be a one line item. Remove the Second Amendment. That's not how constitutional conventions work. If you read the papers, Constitutional Convention is to rewrite the Constitution. And basically you rehash the whole thing. So the old Constitution goes away, a new one starts. That's how you got to have all these states to do that. They all got to agree. So we're not going to get a constitutional convention because we're never going to get all the states to agree, or enough states to agree that we need term limits. Because again, why would you want to do that? So you have a state house, a governor, state representatives, whatever, whose aspirations is to become a federal congressman. Why would they restrict their ability to have all that power when they become a federal congressman? They're not going to do it. So just recently we got two pretty nice rulings when it came to firearms from the federal courts. I think one was in the fifth. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to try to get specifics. Every time I do, I mess it up, and then I got a bunch of lawyers out there telling me that's not how it went. So I'm just going to give you the kind of the idea of it. Every video I've watched on this, they actually read the findings, the law, the whole thing. So they didn't even understand it. They were just reading it and like, I hope somebody understands this. Essentially, there was two rulings. One on this dang thing about a trigger. And essentially, you can hold the trigger back and it allows the weapon to shoot over and over and over again. So the ATF said that was a automatic weapon, which is illegal in the United States, according to that 1968 law. You can't do that. The Second Amendment says we can have a fighter jet. Well, actually, the Second Amendment doesn't say anything about that, but okay. So they were going and confiscating, the ATF were going out and confiscating all these FTRs. The second issue was handgun braces. And they said that was illegal. The ATF did. So they were going around confiscating all those. Well, two federal judges on different subjects, on both, one for one subject, the other for the other subject, found that they wanted to put an injunction on this until it could be reviewed more. So that means the ATF were to stop taking these items. Well, the ATF didn't stop. They made excuses. Well, we can take it from this group of people because they didn't fall in the 5th district. These people are in the 4th district, whatever it was. Again, not a lawyer, don't care. I'm just telling you that nobody's enforcing the rules. So who's going to enforce it? They can't do that. Federal judge said they can't do that. Well, they're doing it. And I say this all the time. They're doing it. They're taking things. Here's the problem, is each president basically has 4 to 8 years to get everything done that they want to get done. Well, we know that this president is Well, I don't think it's the president. I think it's his people who work for him, but that's beside the point. Want to do everything they can to take a lot of things away from us, to make life difficult on us, and to take freedom of speech away. That way they can go to the FBI, and the FBI says, okay, we'll go over to Facebook and make them take our freedom of speech. Conservative speech is being restricted by big tech. And to get rid of guns and just to control the population. That's what this party wants to do. Well, they only have 4 years to do it. Typically, they think in terms of 2 terms, so 8 years. But with this president, they know they're not going to get another term out of him. So they're rushing to get all their wish list taken care of as fast as possible. This is how it works. And we're too dumb to think, we keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So if you click this up next box, it will take you to that video where I was talking about the ATF. So if I can inspire you to realize they can, so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.